7:21 is the time, and that means it's time for Political Breakfast. We're live again this morning due to an extremely fluid political season. Today's headline in Georgia is that Vice President and now presumptive presidential nominee Kamala Harris is coming to town. It's not just a stump to mobilize Democrats and hopefully sway independents and undecideds. It serves as a wake-up call for everyone that this state remains a major player in the race for the White House. Here this morning is Saba Long, Executive Director of the Atlanta Civic Circle. She's in for Theron Johnson, and Republican Strategist Brian Robinson. Good morning to you both.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, Brian. I'm going to start with you. Seems a lot has changed since Kamala Harris emerged as a likely presidential nominee. But it was you who said her name on the ticket would not change a thing because her approval ratings at the time were in the low range with President Biden. But recent polls are now indicating otherwise. So I have to ask you, what do you have to say for yourself this morning?
First of all, let me say Kamala Harris is still the underdog in this race, as President Obama and Mrs. Obama said in their endorsement of her. That said, it is more complex than what I saw coming right out of the gate when I said that she didn't change the equation, because my thought process was she still owns the Biden record that is largely unpopular, and people who won't change are still going to go with someone else. She is not a change candidate. That was my thinking. But I think she does have a chance in Georgia if she's able to perform well over these next 2 to 3 weeks heading into the convention and make a second first impression on Americans. Her first impression during her campaign for president in the 2020 cycle did not impress. This is a new opportunity. She has looked comfortable in her situation for the last week. She did great at her Wisconsin rally. She looked statesmanlike in her meeting with Netanyahu. That was a very important visual for her. So if she's able to move the bar with black male voters, with Gen Z voters who have been favoring Trump over Biden in Georgia, and with those swingy, white, college-educated, metropolitan Atlanta voters, then she's got a real shot. Like I always said that Biden's numbers with Trump would tighten before we saw just how bad his mental state had become. So I always thought the race was going to get closer than it has been in polling. But if she's able to perform, she has a shot in Georgia. Well,
Saba, let's bring you in here. Former Lieutenant Governor, GOP Governor Jeff Duncan wrote, a column in the AJC saying he's backing Harris and saying that she's capable of reaching beyond her base and winning over dissatisfied Republican voters who don't want another Trump presidency. He doesn't see her as an underdog. Did you get that feeling after reading that article?
Well, I think because he has been a very clear never Trumper, he's going to say that, right? I don't think he would publicly think of her as an
nothing
underdog.
New there, right?
But I mean, I think what is clear is if you have folks like Jeff Duncan coming out, I mean, just last night, 190,000 white men across the United States got on a Zoom call to support Kamala Harris. They raised $4 million. I mean, honestly, when have we ever seen that happen in electoral politics? That's quite fascinating.
Yeah, the momentum. A lot of people say the momentum is on her side right now. Brian, here in Georgia, though, we haven't heard much from top Georgia Republicans, on Harris recently. Is that their role? And if so, why aren't Republicans stumping louder?
Well, I think you're going to see that today, Lisa. This is why I'm glad we're able to do this live with Kamala Harris coming here to Georgia for an event at Georgia State. And you're going to see some Republican elected officials bracket that event, and that means they're going to be doing some news conferences, providing quotes, that sort of media interaction before and perhaps after her rally to maybe respond to what she said at the rally. So I think her being here provides the news hook for Republicans to begin to speak out on this issue. Now, it does take a little bit of time to turn the direction of the ship. Republicans have been primed to attack and go after and post up on Joe Biden. Now there's a new target, and she's got a different record to some degree beyond sharing the Biden administration record. She has a different brand than Joe Biden, and we've gone from a white man in his 80s to a mixed race woman in her late 50s. It's going to be a different approach. So that calculation is now over. I think it's game on as we head into August.
Yeah, but leading into this, Saba, from your perspective, does it seem that the GOP is unnerved by it all, this so-called momentum that the Harris campaign is enjoying right now?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, just last night, JD Vance told donors at a private fundraiser that Kamala Harris becoming the candidate was a quote sucker punch. So I think they were absolutely surprised. I think they were surprised at the momentum, which we talked about. I mean, we know it will subside. But again, when you have a week of Zoom calls that are not organized by the campaign, but organized by individuals, a real grassroots effort, showing momentum and energy, whether it's Black women, white men, a variety of various groups coming together and saying, we're going to help get this woman elected, that really says something. But often what happens in Democratic politics, they win the popular vote, and the question is what happens at the Electoral College.
For sure, the Electoral. Yeah, we saw that with Hillary Clinton. Exactly. Brian, can you zero in on the dissatisfied Republican voters that Jeff Duncan was referring to here in Georgia? Do you think maybe after this visit we'll see more Republicans who were on the fence jump over to the Harris side?
When you talk about dissatisfied Republican voters, I think there's a lot of crossover there with those white college-educated Metro Atlanta voters that I was talking about. There's also crossover with the Kemp Warnock voters that are very specific to our state. These are the same folks, largely, and the fact is they have gone back and forth. We've seen them vote for Biden in 2020, and there's no doubt that many of them came back, maybe more than most came back to vote for Brian Kemp in 2022. So a candidate that can appeal to them and seem sensible and seem rational, it doesn't seem to matter to them if they're liberal or conservative. They want somebody that they see as able to do the job. And that's an opening for Kamala Harris in this state. We've seen those voters reject Donald Trump in the past. I think a lot of them have come back to Donald Trump because they're unhappy with inflation, because they thought Joe Biden wasn't up to the job. She's got a chance to get them. And look, to Saba's point, do Democrats have energy? Lots of energy. They had almost none before. So they were starting from zero, and they really have cranked the motor. But let's not forget that Republicans have the energy too. And now Democrats are united, as Republicans have been all year long. When you saw that Republican convention, that was a united party that we saw on our TV screens.
Yeah, I think I read somewhere the Harris has given herself, 9-10 days to pick a running mate. Saba, who do you think is in the running, and who will best fit her campaign and her campaign style?
Well, the latest person is Tim Walz, the governor of Minnesota. So that's an interesting one to see just how quickly folks rally. They pick one, you go online, you see somebody say, oh, this person, and then all of a sudden you just see a barrage of clips and, that individual talking about why they would be a good candidate. Governor Roy Cooper of North Carolina took himself out of the running yesterday, which was interesting. And he did that in part because he was concerned about the lieutenant governor, who was a Republican, coming out and, essentially kind of undoing a lot of what Roy Cooper has done in North Carolina.
Yeah, Brian, in 30 seconds or less, can you tell it why not someone from Georgia? Why isn't someone from Georgia making that list?
Well, I think when you look at the list that's been bandied about, it's all white men. And there's not a white man Democrat in Georgia who really fits the bill. The most high profile would be Jon Ossoff, but John's still in his 30s at this juncture. So that I think that it's just that technicality that keeps Georgia off of the board, because Georgia would be a great place to make a play if there was the proper candidate here. I think Tim Walz has shown himself to be a pretty good performer. Mark Kelly's got a fantastic resume, and he's from Arizona, which Harris must win to have a pathway, in my opinion. So a couple of good options out there, but not many. So I think the names we're talking about are going to be the ones that she's pulling from.
Republican Strategist Brian Robinson, Saba Long, Executive Director of the Atlanta Civic Circle. As always, thank you so much for checking in.
Great to be with you.
Have a great day.